World Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola. Everyone's in studio this week. To my left is Leif Johnson.
Hi.
Jason Cross.
Hello.
And the most important man in the room,
you
as I
always
like to
say
call
that.
him, as I always say,
You make me blush.
is our producer, Dan Masuoka.
Hello, everyone.
And as I always say, he's the most important man in the room because he represents you, the viewer, who's watching us live right now. If you have any comments or questions, please let us know on Twitter and on YouTube.
Well, we already have something. There's no
Great.
iOS 11.4 update available? Question mark? What's going on here?
Exactly.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah.
was fast.
Yeah.
So as Dan pointed out, great example that we like to hear from you, our audience watching us live. So any comments and questions, Dan keeps an eye on those rooms, and he'll let us know what you guys are thinking. So please, any comments or questions, it's important to our show. And our topics today, we're going to talk about external graphics units. We're going to talk about the Developers Union. But first, as one of our viewers pointed out, we're talking about iOS 11.4.
Yeah, is that a typo? It's not a typo.
No,
Not a
typo.
typo. Specifically, where is it?
I know.
So it lives it lives in beta.
Yeah.
So it's sort of
There's
here.
been 6 beta releases.
Yeah. So the reason why iOS 11.4 we're kind of excited about it is because there are two features in it that we're all kind of waiting for. And I might as well get to it. We held a poll on Twitter asking what features about 11.4 are people most excited about. The number one feature is messages in iCloud.
Right.
And then 57% of people who voted are looking forward to that feature. 37% said AirPlay 2. And then 6% said Schoolwork and ClassKit, which was introduced. Was it November? When was that Chicago event now? That was so long ago.
It was March. I think it was March.
Was it so long? It was only March.
November. No, it's March.
March.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, when they announced that those are coming in.
Yeah, and those are very niche features. You know, those are kind of developer centric. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that it didn't get a lot of votes. So
But these other two were announced and demoed
right,
at WWDC last year.
Yes.
And we're less than 3 weeks. We're less than 2 weeks, right, from WWDC
Yes.
this year. So
yeah,
where are they?
Yeah.
And 6 betas is for these late stage point releases. 6
Right.
betas is kind of on the high side. Usually,
right.
they're not in beta that long before they release them, but it's probably because there's still major features.
Yeah.
AirPlay 2 has come and gone from iOS 11 beta releases.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
And it's been in like 11.
pushing it back.
iOS 11.4 has been in beta 6 iterations, but those two features have been in beta since who knows how long.
Yeah, prior versions of iOS 11.
Right. So it's not like they just started testing those two features in particular. They've been in the
Yeah.
cycle for a long time.
It's like waiting for the next George R. R. Martin Marvel.
I get how they're difficult to get right,
Yeah.
especially something like messages in iCloud, because if you've ever used any of these services that sync messages
Yeah.
between devices, like in the cloud and stuff, like there's always something wrong, and when it goes wrong, it's maddening. Like how come when it works fine and then suddenly you just don't get a message on this device or whatever,
Yeah.
you don't know why, or something gets out of order or whatever, so they want to get it right.
Right.
But it's been a while. Come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm waiting for that one. That's for me going to be one of the most useful
Yeah.
features.
Yeah, I'm pretty sick and tired of like getting a message in my phone and then deleting it. And then I go to my Mac at home and all of a sudden there's like 12 different text
Yeah.
messages. And I'm like, I have to clean that up. And
Right.
I know it's not a difficult thing to do, but
It's busy work.
right, it's busy work. It's one of those things like, why isn't
And then
it
you
feels
set
like a
up,
simple thing
you
to
set
do.
up any new device,
Right.
and you're starting from scratch.
Right.
It's syncing from there forward, but you don't have any of your history. and
Right.
stuff, so especially given what's in our messages these days.
Yeah.
That's the worst part.
It's great. It's great to have that. So
yeah.
And especially since they've added so many features to iMessages to where,
Yeah.
it makes it interesting just beyond text messaging. That's another reason that have that it's really important to have it.
Yeah, there are very few. Apple historically, there are very few times where they release a feature that still has a lot of work ahead of it.
Mhm.
And so the fact that they've kind of held back on releasing like AirPlay 2 and messages in the cloud isn't that surprising. I think the fact that it's taken this long
Yes.
yeah.
is the surprising part. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
like you said, it's only been almost a year now.
Can you recall another time where something announced at WWDC wasn't released by the next WWDC?
see, I
like
can't-
a software feature or something. You're not a delayed piece of hardware.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something that I can't.
I mean, the AirPower is going to end up. Where's that?
Right,
So
air power.
that's another thing. But although that was announced at the iPhone event, wasn't it?
I think
Not
so.
not WWDC.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that was announced with the new iPhones.
Right. And I want to say Apple File System, but I don't remember.
Oh yeah, did that version of macOS take that long to release that it wasn't at the next WWDC?
Maybe something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
if someone in the audience can
I
remember.
don't remember.
I have a hard time really thinking of any,
Yeah. I mean, but
especially
that's-
anything customer facing.
Exactly.
that took that long.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Apple File System is something that most people would be like, "What's that?" And
Yeah,
then,
you wouldn't notice it.
They wouldn't notice it. So if anybody remembers when that was revealed and when it was officially announced or officially released, I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't. It feels like there was a long period.
Was it Sierra or was it? It was Sierra that first actually shipped, but then it was an optional. All right, my brain
Yeah.
is telling me it's like it was an optional thing
I-
before Sierra, and
Exactly.
then Sierra was the one that officially pushed it to everyone.
That's what I want to say too, but I can't remember. If
And you
that's
could
exactly.
format a
Yeah,
drive as
that sounds familiar.
optionally.
Yeah, it was, but also, I want to say it wasn't necessarily a public beta,
Right.
but it was kind of understood that this was going to take a while. Kind
Yeah.
of, so
That
to
makes
speak.
sense.
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't one of those things that Apple File System and every user goes, "Oh yeah,"
Yeah.
They don't even know what it means. Whereas messages in the cloud is kind of a thing
Yeah, it's fair.
yeah, like you were saying, it's a user facing kind of.
Well, we have a couple questions on Twitter, and the first one kind of brings up a good point. And the question is, any idea when Apple Pay Cash will go live in the UK? It's on the wallet, but it can't be activated. So that's kind of like a features that are not available everywhere.
Yeah, that's usually that doesn't come with new iOS releases.
Right.
Like
They release it
iOS
whenever.
release makes Apple Pay Cash possible, and then it's down to Apple working with the banks and all that stuff.
So that's probably more of an EU-based thing,
So-
right?
Yeah. I think that's more
Yeah.
of regulatory type.
That's
Stuff.
and they never really announce ahead of time all the country rollout. Like they'll do it when they
Yeah.
first announce the feature. They'll say, and it's coming to the U.S. in November or
Right.
something, and then other countries. So I don't remember Apple giving any kind of date on the UK for Apple Pay Cash.
Usually, when they do, further countries like that, it is kind of like a quiet release, and I think
Yep.
that's what it's like on the back end. It's not really the actual
Yeah,
patch.
Yeah.
exactly.
And then there's another question, and that's Hades asking about bringing newer software to or if you can emulate a newer iOS on an unsupported device. So maybe you have a really old iPad, so that you can run the newer apps. How is that possible? Is there any way to do that?
I don't think there is a way.
I
No.
don't think there's a way to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And if anything, that kind of thing would go in the opposite direction. Like you would never
Right.
emulate newer. That's just supporting the newer OS. Then it would just
Yeah.
support the new OS. And Apple has no reason not to make old devices support the new OS, like artificially.
Right.
It's when they cut a device off, it's for a technical reason, and they go further back than anyone.
yeah.
That's
you,
true.
Can you
yeah.
jailbreak it and do it, or no? It just won't work.
I don't think you can.
I don't think I've never heard of anyone jailbreaking and running a newer unsupported version of the OS and having it actually work in any fashion.
Huh? Okay.
Yeah.
And there's some
Because,
that
like I
just
said,
can't
it's
handle
usually
it.
a technical reason. Like they just won't support 32-bit anymore, or they need these extensions that processor extensions, or a certain amount of RAM, or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's some hardware hook that that newer OS.
Honestly, they go back 5 years. So if your
Yeah.
device is
Yes.
over 5 years old and you want to run the newer OS on it, you're going to have if it worked, you would have a bad experience.
Yes.
It would be so slow
Yeah.
and ponderous and annoying. At this point, you're better off.
Yeah,
Like you need a newer device, even if it's not a top of the line device. You don't have to spend $1,000.
right.
And that's important to say because, a lot of people cynically say, oh, Apple's just aimed at getting you more phones every year. But no, Apple is actually pretty good at supporting its older devices. And like you said, it goes way back. And if it just can't run it, it can't. So the idea is, you do need to get a newer device.
Better than any Android phone.
Yes.
I mean, it's not even close.
So, do we have any predictions on 11.4 when it'll be released? I would say I'm thinking it's going to be released at WWDC.
Yes.
I think it's before. I don't think
think
they
it's
can.
before?
I think it would be embarrassing for them. WWDC is always about the new
Right.
It's
OSs.
got to be the hype.
Right.
There's no way they're on stage talking about iOS 12 and releasing major features in iOS 11
11.4.
at that time. Like that would be embarrassing. I think they. Also, the last beta 6, came out just a few days after beta 5, just for developers. And usually when that happened, and beta 5 was the really big download. It was like downloading the whole thing again, another
Right.
2 gigs or something.
Right.
Usually those are signals that, this is a release
we're getting
candidate, right?
close.
This is
Okay.
where, if it's not Gold Master, like we think we're done.
Yeah.
So it could be dropping today for all we know, but I think it's definitely got to be before WWDC.
I thought actually it would drop today.
Right.
Yeah, while
So I
we're
came into
talking,
work
it would
going,
mess us up.
Yeah, I thought it would drop today because we were going to talk about it. So, but
This is why that's kind of why I was saying that thing about the question, where I was saying we're getting so close to WWDC. And, that was one of the things I kind of jokingly, said as a possible poll topic is, should they just like roll all this into iOS 12 and not even worry about it? Because it'll be embarrassing. So
Right. But then iOS 12 won't release till the fall.
right,
That's true.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to make them wait till the fall.
yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, so the OSs that they showcase at WWDC usually doesn't ship until the fall. Like, is it? I want to say end of September.
Yeah, usually right around when the new
Yeah.
iPhones hit,
Yeah. So
like a week or two before or
Right.
something.
Then make
Yeah.
it within the next week then.
So, but yeah, WWDC is June 4th.
4th through 6th or something, but the 4th is the keynote, the big
The
keynote.
4th is the
The big one.
keynote, and the big announcements usually happen during the keynote. So the 4th. So, and it's if you want to watch the keynote, you can watch it. You can watch the keynote online at Apple's website, and I think also through the Apple TV app, the Events app.
Yep.
And the WWDC iOS app, which still has 2017 content in it. I checked it last night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they don't want to reveal anything.
And Safari.
And Safari,
You can
yeah.
watch on Safari
You can
on
watch on
iOS
Safari.
devices or Macs.
Yeah.
Not on Windows. Although weirdly, they support Edge on Windows.
Oh, do they?
It's because of the streaming protocol that they use. It's supported by
Right.
Edge, but it's not supported by like Chrome or anything like that.
Okay.
That's funny.
And Apple has no desire to change whatever. So if you're on a Windows PC at work or something like
Yeah.
that, and you want to watch the stream or something, Edge works,
Yeah. So,
and then Safari on a Mac.
yeah. So if you're interested in watching that, they also do. So WWDC is, it's developer focused. There are a lot of workshops and sessions that developers there go to. All of those are streamed online, but you have to be signed up as a developer to see those sessions.
Right.
So the keynote is available to everyone, but all the other sessions you have to sign up as a developer online if you want to watch.
And that's
those.
$100, right? A year.
I think it's $100 a year. Yeah.
Still, yeah.
So-
You don't have to sign up for WWDC.
No.
Which is $1,500, I think, for the
Wow.
cheap ticket.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that. So, and the thing about WWDC, if you think you want to go, you can't. So
Oh, it's too late. Yeah.
it's too late.
It's too late.
So, because it's done, they essentially have a lottery because space is limited. So, a limited number of people get to go, which is why they stream everything online. But yeah, so if you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll go, no, you can't just drop by.
You'll be there though.
I will be at the keynote. So I will be at the keynote, and we will be reporting. All of us as a group will be reporting on the happenings there. So stay tuned for that. There were also a couple other Apple announcements that happened in the past couple days. Like today, they announced the $50 rebate for the batteries.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. So if you paid the full, is it the full $79?
If you paid $79 for an iPhone 6 battery swap between, I think, January and December 2017 or whatever, then they won't refund you the $50 difference now that they dropped it to $29 for that phone, but they will give you a $50 credit.
That's a credit. Okay. So you get a credit towards the Apple Store, and you could use it to buy a cable.
Right. You buy it. You use it to buy
The new $19, right?
a new $19 USB-C 1 meter cables.
Or you could use it to buy a Lightning to headphone adapter that you probably lost 4 or 5 times.
So Hades has a kind of like a higher level question, and that is, when do you think OS systems will be more predictive in kind of like figuring out what you're trying to do and what your next process is going to be? And that kind of, I guess, when do you think this is my question then, is when do you think there's going to be like a major OS update where you're like, wow, this is different?
So your question first, I think it might be a while. Actually, it was pointed out on Twitter today by a few people that today, as of today, I have to make sure I'm wording this right. As of today, OS 10 is now older than the classic Macintosh operating system that it replaced.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's, I mean, how many years is that?
It's a lot of years.
10,
10, right?
Is it 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for a major, I mean, there's always been this kind of thought that eventually iOS and macOS would kind of merge, but which kind of goes counter to what Apple's always been somewhat presenting or actually stating.
Yeah.
But in practice, you'll see iOS features that have been brought over to macOS, like the Launchpad and things like that.
Messages has nice.
Right. So
Maps and Siri and things like that.
yeah, and they've always said that they believe that there are two ecosystems, or there are separate ecosystems if you count watch and TV. So I guess my point is, if there is going to be a major revamp, the next major revamp would be if it ever happened, would be a convergence of just one OS for all those, for that ecosystem, for the separate ecosystems, not necessarily a brand new operating system that looks and feels different.
Right.
So,
but it would have to look and feel a little different in order to converge, right? So,
right.
I think there's been rumors to that effect, and it's like always way in the distance.
Yeah.
And rumors are way in the distance are always fuzzy. But iOS is due for at least a visual overhaul of some sort.
Yeah.
And that was one of the long rumored things that was going to be part of iOS 12 and got pushed back to the next release to give them more time to not to bite off more than they can chew, which they seem to have done with iOS 11.
Yeah.
The visual refresh has been pushed off from iOS 12. But I don't think that's like, even if they make the home screen and the lock screen stuff like work and look a little different and whatever, that's not going to fundamentally change the way we use the OS.
Right.
And I think to the viewers' question about it being more predictive, I think we're going to see that come in stages. The way that if you look at what Android P is doing, that they have a thing where in your app drawer, it's going to not just predict, oh, this is an app you use at this time and place usually, but it's going to deep link into it. This is the playlist you usually play. This is the directions you do. When you hit that, you not just open that app, you open that app to that function, right? But it's not an overhaul of the whole operating system into this
Right.
grand predictive thing. It's bringing small predictive things into a piece of the interface that's
Yeah.
already there. And if anything happens with that, I mean, Siri does app recommendations now,
Right.
based on that stuff when you
Yeah.
pull open that drawer. I think we're going to just see stages,
Yeah.
slowly integrated stages of more predictive
Right.
things.
And there's very primitive forms of that now. Like if you, I can't even think of an app, but if you open a particular app, like say on your Mac, it'll open the last document you worked on. There's some apps that
Right.
do that. To say that's predictive is not really correct.
Right.
It's and
It's convenient.
That's called a
Right.
history
it's for
relic.
convenience. You're right.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
it's the
like-
same thing. It's
Right.
the same thing. Like we know what you're going to do next,
Right.
pretty much.
It's
and-
trying to get there.
Odds, yeah.
Right. And it's sort of I guess to use the word hack is not the right way, but it's kind of a hack to do it.
yeah,
But so it's I guess my point is it's definitely something that's top of mind. So
it's not the kind of thing you'd want to rush into and build a whole OS around because
Right.
it's so often wrong. It's so hard. All these predictive things are just like, and there's nothing more frustrating than having significant parts of your entire interface like filled with stuff that is A, unfamiliar
Yeah.
because like that's not what was there before,
Right.
and B, wrong. Like I'm not going to tab on that.
Yeah.
So you've really got to get it right before you start
Right.
pushing it through everything. So it'll come in baby steps.
And Blue Gray on Twitter says Classic and Next have merged. The Finder and OS X bring back an intelligent Classic cursor. And our own Mike Simon on YouTube chimed in, Morlium, regarding the battery refund. It's not store credit, electronic funds transfer, or a credit on the credit card used to pay for the battery replacement service.
Oh,
good.
that's nice.
Oh,
That's
okay.
even better. Okay.
Okay.
We were thinking
so
so
that's-
cynically about Apple.
Cash money.
So you don't
Yeah.
have to buy.
So they just refund you some.
So okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's cool.
That is
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So, yeah. So there was that news came out, and there was also a thing about today that came out about the data and privacy. This is more in relation to. I don't know if people have probably noticed that they're getting a lot of privacy updates
Yes.
in their email and stuff, and it's in reaction
please
to
opt in
right.
to this communication.
Should,
Yes.
should we just insert ours into this video right in the middle?
You're right. So yes, we should just do that update right now for the viewers. But it's in reaction to some stuff that has happened in the European Union.
Yeah, the GDPR.
Yeah. So Apple today, did they officially announce something? Because I couldn't find a press release, but they came out with for European users a way to do a data dump of what Apple's been collecting on you. Kind of like how back in, was it a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Facebook had this whole thing where you can look at your data and see what they're collecting on you. You can do the same thing with Apple. And it's pretty straightforward. If you go to, there's a particular website, it's privacy.apple.com. You have to log in with your Apple ID. And if you're in the EU, there is like a particular, you go to an index page that will, I think, has a link to let you download your data. If you're in the United States, you won't see that. But there is a way to get your data. You essentially have to make a request to get your data.
Right.
So you have to jump through a couple more hoops.
And have you guys done any? Have you guys made your request? And what do you know how long it'll take? And what do you expect to see?
I haven't made my request yet. So.
I haven't, but there's been a few articles where people have done this, and it takes it has taken the people in those articles a couple of weeks before Apple gives you your thing, and it's a fair amount of information, but it's a lot less than
Like Facebook.
yeah. It's not like they don't have your pictures. Like they're not sending you your pictures and stuff because they're storing those, but they're encrypted in a way Apple can't even look at them
Right.
if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So the stuff that they actually have are things like the apps you've downloaded, what you've paid for them, things like your credit card information, and the stuff you would expect, things that they need to do to make their services work. And I haven't seen any real surprises where somebody was like, "Oh my God, Apple's collecting that." Because
Yeah.
They
almost
really did do my fingerprint.
yeah, there's right. Nobody's fingerprint, nobody's facial information, none of that's collected. That'll stay on your device.
Yeah.
And everybody, it's sometimes a surprisingly large amount of data, but everything seems to have a clear. Oh, well, they need to know this so that they know that I purchased this app. They know that, or whatever,
Right.
Yeah.
or that they know. Oh, when I wanted directions from the Maps app, in order to give me directions, they needed to know where I am. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so if you're interested in doing that, it's privacy.apple.com. And it's just a significant amount of data to download. So if you're using like a
Cellular connection.
cellular connection, you probably don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So or make sure you have enough storage space on your storage device to handle the downloads. So, and then another thing that came out today was a report by Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg about a new 7-nanometer A12 processor that could be in the 2018 iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That makes sense to me.
No,
Yeah.
totally makes
That
sense,
doesn't
yeah.
seem like a crazy scoop to me.
I mean, that's
because-
kind of predictable. So.
I mean, Apple they're always bleeding edge on manufacturing process technology.
Yeah.
Like they were 10 nanometer first. You know,
Yeah.
they pay the big money to TSMC or Samsung, depending on the year, to get the first stab at the first stuff off the block. And 7 nanometer will be ready from TSMC this year. There's and Global Foundries. AMD is going to be shipping some 7 nanometer parts, not in large volume, not their premium stuff, but stuff for workstations and all this fall. So for their sampling processors now and stuff, and these are big processors. Like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if that, when they went from, oh shoot, I just blanked. What is, so that it's the A11 Bionic, right?
Yes, that's the 10 nanometer one.
that's right. And then the previous, the A10 was,
Either 14 or 16. I don't
Yeah.
remember. That node is kind of fuzzy. Some people call it 14. Some people call it 16.
Right.
These measurements are all kind of wonky because it's like, which features of the chip are you measuring exactly?
Right.
Everybody measures it. Every
Yeah.
manufacturer measures it a little differently.
yeah,
The main benefits of going, like, say, from 10 nanometer, which is the A11 to 7, is you cram all the features are shrunk, so you can cram more stuff in an area.
yeah,
Which doesn't mean the chip is going to be smaller. An identical chip would be smaller, but they'll take up that space, adding more transistors, adding more GPU, more CPU, more-
right. It allows them
know.
more freedom to,
to add more stuff,
stuff
more
to
power
it,
to the chip.
yeah.
And Apple will likely invest heavily in the image signal processor and which they added in the A11, their machine learning their block to accelerate machine learning functions
Right.
and stuff like that'll probably get a big boost. And then of course the CPU and GPU will also be faster, but
yeah,
it also at a given sort of clock speed and stuff and size of chip, it should use less power.
yeah,
So that'll be good. Battery life is so based on your radio operation, the screen, all this other stuff. That's like
There's a lot of
even
stuff.
if the chip uses half the power, it doesn't mean you get like double the battery life or
Right.
anything. But it'll help them boost battery life. Too.
yeah. Yeah, so that's an interesting development. I mean, it's sort of it wasn't necessarily a surprising revelation. This is sort of like the life of a processor, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Right.
Yeah,
It's neat that they got to 7 nanometer in a year. It's
Yeah.
not
That's
Apple's
true.
doing,
Right.
but normally it's 2 years on a node.
right.
And they went from 10 to, they were on that 16, 14 node for a
Yeah.
couple of years. They could go to 10, then the next year they're on 7. That's pretty quick, but all credit to TSMC and Global Foundries
Right.
and those guys who are researching this stuff
Yeah.
to get that ready.
Yeah. So they have no problem shrinking chips, but messages in the cloud. That's I mean, there's no analogy there.
No.
I just thought it was funny.
Man, that Apple's silicon guys are on point though.
That's
Those
true.
guys
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
incredible chips.
Yeah.
Like really world class mobile chips.
Yeah, those guys are pretty good. So I don't think we'll see anything. We probably won't hear about anything like about this chip at WWDC. Hopefully, we'll hear about stuff about 11.4 at.
If
before
WWDC has chip news, it'll be the iPad version of the A11, like an A11X for an iPad that's the same as the A11, but just with a couple more CPU cores and a couple more GPU cores because you've got that bigger thermal envelope and that bigger battery in an iPad. They tend to do that. That tends to come at WWDC. So if there's a new iPad Pro or something with an A11X, that's what we'd hear about.
Yeah, Apple doesn't usually. When they talk about their processors, it's at a product launch. They usually don't go, "Hey, we're working on this." In general, but they especially don't do that with processors. So, but yeah, so WWDC just around the corner. I'm sure we'll probably definitely hear more about this privacy issue thing, even though it's EU centric. Apple likes to tout that
It's ahead of the game on this stuff. Yeah,
that they care about.
They probably had less to do than other major companies collecting your data to get compliant with the GDPR.
Right. Yeah. It just seems like this is something easy that we can do and get a lot out of it. So yeah. So one thing that we probably won't hear from Apple about at WWDC, but we might hear from the developer community about, is something called the Developers Union. So last week, a group of developers came out with sort of like, I guess it's sort of a proposal or an idea.
Yeah, it's not really like a union, but it's like a listen to us kind of thing.
Yeah, that they quote unquote want to.
It's a petition, is what it is.
It's essentially a petition, right?
There's no formal organizational structure or dues or anything like that. It's like, we, the undersigned, do demand, and then they want everybody to sign, including non-developers. Honestly, they're asking people to sign up.
Yeah. So this developers union, they kind of revealed themselves last week, and they want to quote advocate for sustainability in the App Store, unquote. And as you guys are pointing out, it's not a real union, so to speak, in terms of a traditional labor
membership
kind of force,
right?
That a lot of people
real collective bargaining. We're going to quit if you don't give us our demands. Like there's no
Yeah, there's nothing like that.
So what exactly does sustainability in the App Store mean? 'Cause you're not throwing anything. There's no actual physical garbage.
Right.
So basically what this group wants is they want a few things to kind of help promote more sales of their apps.
Right. They mean sustainable for developers. They want developers to be able to make a living making apps more easily.
And make it easier to try out products. Things like
there's not a lot of specifics. They asked for better revenue split and trial modes, which is way behind. They should. That's a thing that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And especially like when I do, like take a recent example, when I was doing the best note-taking apps for the iPad, I got to buy all those. I mean, I'm great to do that, but that really adds up. And, and it's, if you were able to see like a little trial version, and the only way you can currently do trials for like an expensive app is if it has a subscription mode and stuff. And so I know some people, it's interesting to see in the developer community because say Ulysses, productivity app that I use a lot now, has gone over to a subscription mode. IA Writer, which is popular and it's very similar, has not. And so the only way that you can try out IA Writer is if you buy it. And so IA Writer is only like $10 or something, but Scrivener is like 30.
Yeah. Or some apps, you just have to have a separate free app in the store.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's like feature incomplete.
Yes.
And then you can say, well, but then we have a separate paid app. So they really do need a mode where you can say, here's the full app. And then, it'll stop working in 2 weeks or a month or whatever the developer says. And then give us money to.
Yeah.
So how successful do you think these developers are going to be with these demands?
The problem that I would say with that, I was looking through the list of them. I saw a couple of apps that I used in there. I think I was seeing on there there's 547 apps that have done it. Some of the I recognize some of them. Corculus, which I've used sometimes, that's free, but you can get it through a subscription. Those best note taking apps. But for the most part, I didn't even recognize a lot of them, and I was clicking on them. Some of them didn't even have reviews. If they had reviews, they had 3, and I have to admit, I thought it was kind of sad. I admire the cause, but they need some apps with some greater weight behind it, I think, in order for Apple to listen. So
I also think they need to make real demands.
yes,
Like the demands are not concrete. They go a better revenue split. Well, tell us what that means to you. What exactly? What would you like the number to be? And then there's no threat. They're like, well, please do these things or else we'll, I don't know, complain some more.
Right.
Like, there's no, you would need a critical mass of people who would threaten to pull their apps from the App Store or, to always publish everything to Android first,
Right.
90 days first or something. Like you need to make some sort of, because right now it's not really bargaining when you you just ask somebody for something and don't. That's not
Right,
that's not
and-
bargaining. That's just asking.
Right. You just asking or
So
else.
they're politely asking now, and there's no or else.
Yeah.
And
Will there be an or else eventually?
Well, so according to reports, this union has a goal this week to have 1,000 members, and they're hoping to get 20,000 by WWDC
wow,
right.
before they can approach Apple with, I don't know, whatever specifics
Yeah.
of what they would like, and start a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
And as of now, they're, according to the developers union, the developersunion.org website, just in case people want to go check
Is
it
it
out
the
themselves.
Worldwide Developers Union?
It's www.thedevelopersunion.org. You can check it out yourself. Right now, they have 477 people support this cause, which is, they're 48% towards their 1,000 goal for this week.
Right. After being, it's all the week's almost up. When did this start?
I think it started on Friday, which
Last
seemed
Friday,
like an
yeah.
odd day a Friday afternoon to
Yeah.
reveal it. So
Well, it's Wednesday today. Where do you guys stand on this issue? And if you support it, are you where do you guys fit?
well, that's kind of what I was saying. In order for the Apple to pay attention to these, they're going to have to get some apps that people actually recognize. That it's kind of like Jason was saying. We're going to pull our apps from the App Store. It's going to have to be something that's really scary, as opposed to this sticker app or something like that. I kind of agree with this one developer that was quoted in a recent Wired article where he was saying, I'm not really cool with this. He said, I make all my money from Apple. I don't really feel like I should be throwing rocks at them. And I thought that was a very good quote. And
They're going to have a hard time getting support from the popular and successful apps because they're already popular and successful.
Right.
exactly.
I think they would have a lot better success if they were just concrete about saying, like, a better revenue split is going to be tough to push because Apple's not doing what other digital storefronts don't do, on that front. So they're not, the split isn't weird or anything there. But I think, but if they said, hey, we really want trial modes and apps, like really getting people together, advocating for that could be something. That's something they do need that other digital storefronts do have, and it's not a good user experience as well, not to have that, to have separate paid and free apps for things and stuff like that. That's just not, that's not good. That's not the way people are used to working and stuff. So
I think
I'm with them on that demand.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm with them on a lot of things, like the trial things. That seems like
That's a no-brainer.
that's a no-brainer. Having the revenue cut. So currently, the revenue cut is Apple gets 30%, and the developer gets 70%. To me, that sounds like a lot.
Up to a wait.
With the subscriptions, they alter it a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Well, not
it's-
subscriptions, but also everything else. Like it's something like after a year and a certain
Yeah.
amount, the number changes. It becomes 85/15 or
Something
or
like that,
80/20.
yeah.
I can't remember the number.
Yeah,
It changes after a year.
yeah.
Or
So-
after X downloads or something.
Yeah. So to me, it initially sounded like a lot, but if you consider what Apple's doing on the back end. They're hosting your app, they're providing you, it's essentially the storefront and stuff like that. Maybe it's not a lot. I don't know.
I don't think Apple makes significant money off of the app,
Off of the
their
30
cut of the App
right,
Store.
the
Like
30%.
what it costs them to do the hosting and distribution, to check things for viruses, to all the
Right.
other stuff that they need to do,
Right.
provide the metrics, the people who work on it. I don't think
Yeah.
that's.
And Apple does have a lot of resources allocated to support the App Store. There are a lot of people who go in and check every app and stuff like that.
yeah.
So it's not a trivial thing for Apple to do.
And
But
see, that's
I-
really
yeah.
nice because you do have the curation. Like I'm trying to wait on this Steam Link app right now for Apple Arcade, and it was released because you can basically just throw anything that you want to on Android, and that's an exaggeration, but it was. But Apple has to go through this process, and so you have this curation. Number two, it's also really difficult by comparison to pirate things on Apple, and I think that's a kind of a quiet service that they offer to developers. That it's a they actually are kind of protecting the developer's investment just by virtue of that alone.
Yeah, you can't just go download an APK like you can on
Yes.
Android and just take something. So
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm not sure about the revenues and things like Steam and the Windows Store and all these other things.
Yeah.
They take a similar cut
Yes.
with
Right.
give or take a few percent, give or take a thing like after this many downloads the number changes. So they need to be
People complain about
specific about
Steam.
what do they think is a better revenue
yeah.
stream.
Yeah. So and I just lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
But, no, that's all right. What was I going to say? Oh, but yeah, I think. Well, okay, now I remember what I was going to say. so some of the things that developers have been demanding, like the free trials, the developers have been asking for this for a long time individually and haven't gotten anywhere.
Yep.
And so I think they need, if maybe they need to change their approach, start thinking, and maybe if we go as a group and ask this, maybe it'll be more effective. I don't know. I hope that they're effective. I think that, like we said, these seems like no-brainer kind of features that they could offer. And it doesn't seem like there's why wouldn't Apple do this? I don't know why.
I certainly think if they meet their goal, which I think is maybe not likely, of 20,000
Yeah, that seems like
developers by
yeah.
WWDC, if they had that size to go to Apple and say, look at the people who want
Right.
X, Y, and Z, and they can be specific about what they want. I think that's a voice that speaks loudly.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
a lot of developers to, if Apple kind of ignores them, that's a lot of people out there to start making YouTube videos and get on Twitter and start complaining and then, start getting viral about their grievances with the App Store.
Right.
But at the rate it's going, I don't think it's very likely that they're going to hit that kind of critical
No.
mass
Yeah. Yeah.
by that time.
So, yeah, I think, in a whole, I think the developer union is a good idea, but yeah, whether it can succeed or not, it doesn't seem likely at this moment. So, which is unfortunate because there are some changes that should be made, and how to get them done we don't know. It does. Approaches need to be tried, and different approaches need to be tried, and they're trying this approach, and we'll see what happens. So, we're moving right along. Excuse me. So we'll go from developers union to more stuff that we've been doing recently. Specifically, Leif is taking a look at the Razer Core X eGPU. He posted a review of it today. And for people who aren't familiar with eGPU, so eGPU it stands for External Graphics Processing Unit.
Yes.
And there's a feature that was released a little while ago for macOS that allows you to connect an external graphics card to boost your graphics performance on your Mac. So, I mean, this is reliant on Thunderbolt. So you can't do it on every Mac. But
Thunderbolt 3 specifically.
yeah.
Yep.
So what's coming out now, and this has been on the PC for a little while, but now it's on the Mac. So basically, you need to get a chassis, a case that you can put graphics cards in, and then you connect it through Thunderbolt, and then it boosts your graphics performance. And Leif took a look at the Razer Core X, and we have a review of it up on our website. So
Which is chassis without a graphics card in it. You buy this chassis,
Right.
and then you
Yeah.
buy your graphics card.
if you can find a graphics card.
Yeah, and we should mention that Apple only supports.
There it
Oh,
is.
there it
AMDs.
is. If you're watching the stream, there
Yeah,
it
if
is.
you're watching the stream,
it's like a
I'll put it
little
on here.
PC case,
Yes.
essentially. It's got a power supply in there and a little tiny logic board. You plug your.
So basically, you just pull it out, and there's the card. You know,
Yep.
it's like just like Jason said, basically PC. You got your fan, got your power supply, and one port on the back, which is a Thunderbolt 3, and then the card itself, and then you just plugged it in. The beautiful thing about this is that. First of all, I love how easy it is to put the card into this one. When I was first talking about eGPU coverage, it was, took a long time. This one, you basically just saw me do it. Slide it out, put a screw in, and you're done. That's basically it. And another thing that's beautiful about this one is that you just plug it in. That's the way that Mac works. It's better than PC in that way, because a lot of these eGPUs, you actually have to reboot your computer. Mac, you literally just plug it in. The problem is that you need a separate monitor to actually get the effect of it. It's not going to work on your native display without some advanced work. But but the nice thing is that, like, I mainly work on my MacBook Pro, so I could be using this most of the day out and about, and I could come home and I could just slap put the cord into this, and boom, I have this much more powerful graphical unit for powering games and video technically, but for some reason Final Cut Pro doesn't support it yet.
Right.
And,
Needs a patch.
And so, yeah, that's waiting on a patch. But that's the main thing. Is like that's the way I see it. If you have like a MacBook Pro or something like that, but that's your main device. You got everything on it, but you would occasionally like to have more graphical power for games or something. You can have one of these, $300, and then you also got to add whatever the card would cost. That's anywhere from like $500 to $1,000 for the best stuff. And so
They support any of the recent 500 series, essentially, AMD stuff, or the Vega series.
Yeah, it does. It does definitely support the Vega, and it does. Like, this is the RX 580 in here, so it gives you an idea.
No NVIDIA.
No
and
NVIDIA.
No older Radeon cards. None of that stuff yet.
And the really sad thing about it is when we were saying no NVIDIA, so surely you're thinking, everybody was thinking, I can play a game with this on an NVIDIA card through Boot Camp, through Windows. No, you can't.
Does not support Boot Camp.
For some reason, Apple doesn't support it through Boot Camp. So, yeah. But this does the job. It's very simple. Like I said, easy to put together. I love, and it actually kind of powers down when you unplug it. When you take the Thunderbolt 3 down, so you're not even having to worry about it sucking up power, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And but yeah, like I said, you just stick this in, cable into your MacBook Pro, and boom, suddenly you're running.
And in 6 months of mining Bitcoin, you can pay for itself.
Yes. I have to admit, I didn't actually talk about that, but when Razer was talking to me about that, it was, they could say, and you can also do Bitcoin with it. And it's like, on to the next thing. So that was, so yeah, you can shoulder some of the load for your Bitcoin mining operation onto this as opposed to your Mac.
So when you were doing your testing, what kind of testing did you do, and what platforms were you?
Basically, like I used a couple, like the Benchmark Valley. That's one that was mainly used for OpenGL, and there was a couple of them that I ran from Metal, just like the previous Metal ones. Previous GPU coverage I did actually seems to run Metal better, but it's just not as widely supported. And then I did some in games. Rise of the Tomb Raider came out recently, and it has a built-in benchmark, and I noticed a couple of other people used it too. So it's really good to see how a graphically intensive game works on one, and significant. I mean, this is not. The 580 is not a super card, but it's a capable card. And so, I was getting my 60 frames per second with this in there, whereas on very high settings, whereas it was struggling to get 20 on my native MacBook Pro. I believe it's a Radeon Pro 555 card in there. And
honestly, you're not going to get this kind of GPU power in any Mac other than the iMac Pro.
yes.
Yeah.
Like even regular iMacs and stuff don't have the same thing as your full size card, Radeon and Vega, Radeon products
Yes.
these days. So if you don't want to get an iMac Pro, this is the fastest you can get.
So even if you were to spend like a total of $1,000 on this, that's the chassis and the card. You're still not paying as much as you would with an iMac Pro.
Right.
So keep that in mind. But no, for those purposes, for playing high intensive stuff, it's actually
It's a
pretty good.
shame you need an external monitor.
Yes, that's the worst part. And I tried hooking it up to the iMac and because I saw some discussions on Reddit and stuff like that where people were wondering about that. And sure enough, even with an iMac, you still need to have an external monitor. So
It works though.
Yes, it does.
If you've got an iMac with a Radeon 540, that's essentially the mobile variant of the Radeon 540 and stuff in it. You can get a huge boost going up to a 580 or even a Vega 56 or something.
How many people have the desk space to have another monitor if you
Not
have
a
an
lot.
iMac?
Not a lot.
Another monitor and this thing.
Yeah.
I on my review, you'll see where I have the whole setup with my MacBook Pro and this and the keyboard and everything, and you can see how much space that takes up. And that's not including if you're playing a really, a big game that's like a 60 gigabyte game that's meant to do this. You're also going to have an external hard drive. So that's one thing I didn't have on there. So
Yeah, it's pretty big.
yes, and. They do also have one, the V2, which now actually supports Mac as well. V2 is thinner, but it doesn't have as big as a power supply. It's got 4 USB 3.0 ports on the back. It's got an Ethernet port. That strips all that away, and also has some fancy lighting. This strips all that away, mainly to get a lower price. But because it also charges your Mac at 100 watts. Out of the total 650 watts, where 500 goes to everything else. So it's, I mean, for what it is, to do that type of job, I'm very impressed with it, especially with the ease of use of it.
So if I'm not a gamer, but I'm more of a pro apps user like Final Cut.
I think you should wait until they get some very clear-cut support for that, because I think it would be awesome if it gets to that point. And I know Razer was playing up to me about how it can run on 2 other monitors and stuff and everything. But you got to wait. The sad thing is a lot of the deficiencies of it right now are Apple's. I mean, you get this hook this up to your PC. It's pretty amazing. I could, it's 5 stars. And but yeah, with a Mac, it's. There's a lot of limitations, and a lot of it's on Apple's part.
Yeah, because Final Cut's support of eGPUs is very, very, very limited.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really do a lot.
Apparently it's just a couple of functions that even support it, and maybe a patch will fix that. I don't know that Premiere supports it at all.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
And I do know that like 3D modeling, like if you work in
CAD
game
stuff,
design.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So if modeling, yes, it
Maya,
totally
that
uses
kind
it.
of
it does.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
That's cool.
Yeah. So check out Leif's article, his full review on macworld.com. It's on our website. He has several benchmarks and some photos if you want to get a closer look at it. Again, what was the price on it again?
this is $299
So it's $299 without the graphics card.
without the graphics card.
So the graphic, like you were saying, the graphics card will run you about between $500 and $1,000. So
or higher.
yeah.
I mean, today's market for graphics
yes.
cards is bonkers,
Right.
and especially on AMD's things, because they tend to be really good at cryptocurrency mining, and they're buying up all
Yeah,
the
can
cards.
you guys explain the graphics card thing for people who aren't familiar with what's going on there? So
You want to do it?
Yeah, when things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other cryptocurrencies require a significant amount of math operations to be done to sustain the blockchain, to discover new Bitcoin and stuff, they solve like math problems.
Yeah.
Ether's like Ethereum for the Ethereum network is tokens essentially for CPU power and stuff. And they can be done much faster on a graphics processor than on a CPU.
Yeah.
The way the math works out. So people who want to make their fortune in Bitcoin and Ether and stuff like that, they build rigs where they've got these like PCIe extension things where they're plugging like 6 or 8 graphics cards into one motherboard, because it's not a lot of bandwidth. They just need all these hookups to. And then they're buying 10 of them and putting them on a rack, then there's places and mining operations where they have thousands of racks just full of empty motherboards with graphics processors on them and no monitors hooked up and all this, so they're just buying them all up because after the cost of electricity and stuff, the graphics processor will pay for itself in a few months of mining, and then after that you're making money. And then of course you have money in your hardware that you could sell off later if you wanted to. So they've been snapping up all these graphics cards to do cryptocurrency mining.
And for a while there was a shortage of supply of graphics cards, but I think it's kind of caught up now.
Yeah, the price, when I was looking for prices for this, especially on the previous, and that was even like a month ago, they'd gone down just a little bit more reasonable now. So
They should be much lower than they are at the point of the life cycle of these graphics cards. They should be way lower than they are.
Yeah, so I was talking to Brad, who covers for PC World, and he was saying that right now they're kind of back to their MSRP, and at this point they should probably be about 20% cheaper than what they are. So that's
NVIDIA cards are, and that's and the AMD cards haven't quite come down as much because they tend to be a little better at the cryptocurrency stuff than per dollar spent.
And Bitcoin, I think it was a lot worse because Bitcoin was at one point close to like $20,000.
When it rocketed up throughout the last half a year or something to over $16,000, $18,000 per Bitcoin, it just becomes much more economical to buy a graphics card just for that.
And I just looked right now, and Bitcoin is at 7,500. Yeah, so it's it's how low. So at this point, Bitcoin, no one's mining Bitcoin with GPUs because it's not efficient enough. So they're using specialized processors just for that.
But there's a million other cryptocurrencies that are resistant to what they call ASICs. That's what you're talking about. These customized chips for mining. So it's still a thing, but it's getting better. Yeah. And then, of course, the next generation of graphics cards will come out, and they'll be so much better at mining that the formula will change completely, and they'll buy those up.
Yeah.
But for a while there, you could look on like gaming forums and stuff and see everybody posting their threads of like Best Buy just totally cleaned out of graphics cards. And stuff. So.
Empty shelves at Fry's Electronics and stuff. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up in case somebody's like, oh, I'm going to buy one of those, but I can't find a graphics card. I don't understand why. That's why. So, in case you're not familiar with the whole
getting
Bitcoin
better,
thing.
though.
Yeah, but it's getting better. So I think that just about does it for this week's episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 606. So I'd like to thank Leif and Jason. I'd like to thank Dan, our producer.
Thank you, brother.
I'd like to thank the audience for joining us. Join us next week. We'll definitely be talking about WWDC because that'll be the show before that show. And we'll also talk about any other topics that come up in Apple News. So join us next week. Thank you very much. See you later.